The Great Awakening, the first sensation, was cold. Not the gentle chill of morning air, but the bone-deep, absolute cold of death itself, slowly releasing its grip. Dr. Elena Vasquez felt her lungs burn as they drew their first breath in nearly 1,000,000 years. Her eyes opened to darkness, then gradually adjusted to the soft blue glow of emergency lighting that had faithfully maintained its vigil through eons. The cryogenic pod hissed as its seals released, and Elena's body fell forward onto hands and knees. Every muscle screamed in protest. Her dark hair, now streaked with premature silver from the long sleep, fell across her face as she struggled to remember where she was. The memories came slowly, like water through cracked stone. The year had been 2157. Earth was dying, not from war or disaster, but from something far worse: cosmic radiation from a nearby supernova that would sterilize all life on the planet's surface. The Eternal Sleep Project had been humanity's desperate gamble, a way to wait out the radiation while buried deep beneath the Earth's crust. They had calculated it would take 50,000 years for the surface to become safe again. They had been wrong about the timeline by a factor of 17. Elena pulled herself upright, her scientist's mind automatically cataloging the changes around her. The facility's walls showed signs of age: hairline cracks, mineral deposits, the slow work of geological time. But the most disturbing thing was the silence. The background hum of 10,000 sleeping pods that should have filled the air was gone, replaced by an emptiness that spoke of systems long dead. She stumbled through the corridors, her bare feet slapping against cold metal floors. The facility stretched for miles underground, a vast honeycomb of chambers designed to preserve the best and brightest of humanity. As she passed row after row of darkened pods, Elena's heart sank. Most showed the telltale signs of system failure: cracked glass, frozen forms within, the quiet dignity of death. But not all were dark. In Section C7, she found him. Captain Marcus Chen, former commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, was sitting on the edge of his opened pod, methodically flexing his fingers. Unlike Elena, he seemed to have awakened with less disorientation, his military training helping him adapt quickly to their impossible situation. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "I was hoping you'd made it. What's our status?" Elena looked around at the handful of pods still glowing with life signs. "From what I can see, maybe 300 of us are left. Out of 10,000, the number felt like a physical blow. The rest, ... The systems failed over time. We weren't supposed to sleep this long, Marcus. The power cells, the life support, everything was designed for 50,000 years maximum." Marcus stood, testing his balance. He was a compact man with Asian features and the kind of calm presence that had made him a natural leader even before the world ended. "How long has it actually been?" Elena made her way to the nearest control terminal, her fingers dancing over keys she remembered from another lifetime. The screen flickered to life, displaying data that made her breath catch. 870,000 years, give or take a few millennia. The dating systems aren't precise anymore. They stared at the number in silence. Nearly 1,000,000 years. Every person they had ever known, every civilization that had existed on Earth's surface, all of it was gone, buried beneath the weight of geological ages. They were the last humans in existence, as far from their own time as modern humans were. From their earliest ancestors, over the next several hours, they worked together to revive the other survivors. Each awakening was a small miracle and a larger tragedy, another life saved, but another confirmation of how few remained. Among the survivors were Dr. Sarah Kim, a brilliant engineer whose expertise in fusion technology had earned her a place. In the program, David Torres, a historian whose knowledge of human culture had been deemed essential to preserve, and Dr. Michael Okafor, a linguist and communications specialist. As the survivors gathered in the facility's main meeting hall, Alina shared what the computers had revealed about their situation. The Earth above them was no longer the world they remembered. The continents had shifted, new mountain ranges had risen, and oceans had changed their boundaries. The surface radiation had indeed faded, but something else had taken its place. "There are structures in orbit," Alina announced, pulling up grainy sensor data on the main screen. "Massive ones. They're not human in origin or design. Something has been using our solar system while we slept." Sarah Kim leaned forward in her chair, her engineer's mind immediately grasping the implications. Alien technology, after all this time, we finally have proof we're not alone in the universe. More than that, David Torres added grimly, if they're here, in our system, building structures around our planet, then they've likely claimed it. Earth might not be ours anymore. Marcus stood and began pacing, his tactical mind working through scenarios. We need information. How advanced are they? How many? Are they hostile? We can't make any decisions until we know what we're dealing with. Alina nodded. The facility's long-range sensors are still functional, though severely degraded. We might be able to intercept their communications, learn their language, understand their technology level. Dr. Okafor spoke up for the first time since his awakening. If we're going to make contact, we need to be careful about how we present ourselves. We're a species that essentially died and came back to life. That might frighten them, or make them see us as something supernatural. Over the following days, the survivors worked with desperate efficiency to assess their situation. The facilities. Manufacturing capabilities were still partially functional, allowing them to create basic tools and equipment. More importantly, they began to piece together what had happened to the galaxy while they slept. The orbital structures were clearly artificial, massive ring-like constructs that seemed to be harvesting solar energy on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever imagined. Sarah's analysis suggested they were dealing with a Type II civilization, on the Kardashev scale, capable of harnessing the entire energy output of a star. "They're not just using our solar system," Sarah reported to the group during one of their daily briefings. "They're optimizing it. Those rings aren't just collecting energy, they're redirecting it, possibly to power other projects throughout the galaxy." Alina had been working on intercepting alien communications, and her findings were equally disturbing. "I've managed to decode some of their transmissions. They call themselves the Hegemony, and they've been expanding across this region of the galaxy for the past 500,000 years. Earth appears in their records as a reclaimed dead world, useful for resource extraction." The implications were clear. Not only had humanity been forgotten, but their very existence had been erased from galactic memory. They were ghosts in their own solar system, squatters on a planet that others had claimed. But perhaps most shocking was David's discovery in the facility's historical archives. The computers had continued to monitor and record what they could of galactic civilization throughout their long sleep. Buried in terabytes of data was evidence that humanity had actually been known to the galaxy once, long ago. "There are references to us in some of the oldest hegemony records," David explained, his face pale with the enormity of what he'd found. "We weren't just another species to them. We were something they feared. The records are fragmented, but they speak of the species that would not stay dead, and something called the Final War that happened roughly 800,000 years ago. Alina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the facility's cold air. Are you saying we fought them before we went into cryosleep? I think we did more than fight them, David replied quietly. I think we nearly won. The records suggest that humanity was on the verge of matching their technology, maybe even surpassing it. The cosmic radiation that forced us underground, what if it wasn't natural? What if it was their final weapon against us? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They hadn't simply slept through humanity's extinction. They had slept through humanity's greatest war, a conflict so devastating that even the memory of it had been nearly erased from galactic history. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice carrying the same steady resolve that had made him a leader in their previous life. Then we have a choice to make. We can stay hidden, try to rebuild quietly, and hope they never notice us, or we can remind the galaxy what it means to be human. Alina looked around at the faces of her fellow survivor scientists, engineers, historians, soldiers. They were all that remained of a species that had once reached for the stars. The odds against them were impossible. They numbered in the hundreds against a galactic empire of trillions. Their technology was nearly 1,000,000 years out of date. Their world had been claimed by others, but they were human, and humans had never been good at accepting impossible odds. We wake the others, Alina decided. All of them, every survivor we can revive. Then we start building. The galaxy forgot about humanity once. Let's make sure that never happens again. As she spoke, Alina felt something she hadn't experienced since before the long sleep. Hope. It burned in her chest like a small flame, fed by the same stubborn determination that had carried humanity from caves to spacecraft, from Earth to the edges of the solar system. They were humanity's last hope, a handful of sleepers who had awakened to find their species erased from history. But they were also something more. They were the inheritors of nearly 1,000,000 years of human courage, sacrifice, and refusal to surrender. The galaxy had counted humanity out once before. It was about to learn why that had been a mistake. Outside the facility, alien ships continued their work, harvesting energy and resources from the solar system they had claimed. They had no idea that deep beneath the surface of the small blue world they had written off as dead, humanity was stirring once again. The age of human expansion was about to begin anew, and this time they would not be caught sleeping. Ghosts of Tomorrow 3. Weeks had passed since the awakening, and the underground facility hummed with activity that it hadn't seen in nearly 1,000,000 years. Alina stood in the central command center, watching screens that displayed the progress of their massive undertaking. 247 survivors had been successfully revived, a pitifully small number compared to their original 10,000. But each one represented a miracle of human engineering and determination. The facility had been transformed from a tomb into a workshop. Every available space buzzed with activity as teams worked around the clock to understand their situation and prepare for what lay ahead. Sarah Kim had established engineering teams that were reverse engineering their own ancient technology, finding ways to adapt it to their current needs. David Torres led research groups that pored over intercepted alien communications, building a picture of the galaxy they had awakened into. Status report, Alina called to Marcus, who stood at a tactical display showing the positions of the hegemony structures in their solar system. The picture isn't good, Marcus replied, highlighting several objects on the screen. We've identified 47 major installations between here and the outer planets. Mining platforms around the asteroid belt, energy collectors at the Lagrange points, and something massive being constructed near Jupiter that we can't quite figure out. Dr. Okafor looked up from his translation work. I've made progress on their language systems. The hegemony uses a complex mathematical communication protocol that incorporates emotional and cultural contexts. But here's the interesting part. They have specific terms for extinct species and archaeological civilizations. We're classified as both. Alina felt a grim satisfaction at that news. So they really do think we're gone. That gives us an advantage. More than you might think, David added, pulling up new data on his screen. I've been analyzing their historical records, and I've found something remarkable. They don't just think we're extinct, they're terrified of the idea that we might not be. The command center fell quiet as David shared his findings. The ancient records spoke of humanity in terms that bordered on myth. They described humans as the species that adapts, the ones who refuse the final answer, and most tellingly, the sleepers who dream of war. According to their histories, David continued, the final war wasn't won by superior technology or numbers. It was won because they managed to force humanity into what they called the long silence. They were never able to actually defeat us in direct combat. Sarah looked up from her engineering schematics. That explains something I found. In our own archives, the cryo facility wasn't just designed to wait out radiation. It was designed to be completely undetectable, even to the most advanced sensors. Someone expected us to need to hide. Elena began to pace, her mind racing through the implications. So our ancestors didn't just plan to survive, they planned to return. This facility isn't just a shelter, it's a staging ground. Marcus nodded grimly, which means we need to stop thinking like survivors and start thinking like soldiers. The question is, what kind of war are we preparing for? Their answer came sooner than expected. Dr. Okafor's communication monitoring station suddenly burst to life with activity. The normally steady stream of hegemony communications spiked into frantic chatter, all focused on one location, Earth's moon. There's something happening at Luna, Okafor announced, his voice tense with excitement. They're detecting what they call anomalous energy signatures and impossible readings from the lunar surface. Alina rushed to his station, watching as translated messages flowed across the screen. The hegemony forces in their solar system were clearly agitated, reporting sensor ghosts and system malfunctions near Earth's moon. What caught Elena's attention was the tone of the messages. They weren't curious or scientific. They were afraid. Sarah. Alina called to the chief engineer. What do we have on Luna? Did we have installations there before the sleep? Sarah pulled up the facility's archived construction records. Not just installations. We had an entire industrial complex there. Ship construction, weapons research, advanced materials, development. If the temporal shielding held, it might still be operational. Marcus immediately grasped the tactical implications. An automated facility that's been running for 800,000 years. What would it have built by now? Only one way to find out, Alina decided. We need to make contact with whatever's up there. But first, we need a way to get there. The next phase of their awakening began with a project that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Deep in the facility's construction bays lay the remains of humanity's most advanced spacecraft prototypes that had been in development when the cosmic radiation forced them underground. Sarah's teams worked with desperate efficiency to restore them, using manufacturing systems that had been dormant for nearly 1 million years. The ships they built were nothing like the sleek vessels of their enemies. Human engineering had always favored function over form, durability over elegance. The 3 craft they assembled looked more like flying fortresses than spacecraft, bristling with armor and weapons systems that drew on principles the hegemony had apparently never encountered. The advantage of being forgotten, Sarah explained as she walked Alina through the lead ship's systems, is that nobody's prepared for your technology. Their defenses are designed around their own weapons and those of their current enemies. They have no idea what human weapons can do. Alina ran her hand along the ship's central console, feeling the solid reliability of human craftsmanship. What are we calling this class of ship? The crew's been calling them revenants, Sarah replied with a slight smile. Ships that returned from the dead. 3 days later, Alina found herself strapped into the command chair of the lead revenant as they lifted off from the hidden launch bay beneath Earth's surface. Marcus commanded the second ship, while Dr. Okafor led the third, his linguistic skills making him the natural choice for first contact protocols. The journey to Luna took 14 hours, during which they maintained complete communications silence. Hegemony ships patrolled the space between Earth and the Moon, but their sensors were designed to detect known threats. The Revenants, with their ancient human design and advanced stealth systems, slipped past the alien patrols like ghosts. As they approached Luna, Elena's breath caught. The Moon's surface was transformed. What had once been a barren landscape now gleamed with the geometric patterns of massive construction. Cities of metal and crystal stretched along the lunar valleys, while orbital platforms hung in perfect formation above the surface. But most remarkable were the ships. Thousands of them filled the space around Luna, each one bearing the distinctive design philosophy of human engineering. They weren't the sleek curves of hegemony vessels, but the angular, purposeful lines of craft built for war. Lunar Control, this is Earth Revival, Mission 1. Alina broadcast on the ancient human frequencies. Please respond. The reply came immediately, in a voice that was unmistakably artificial, yet somehow warm. Welcome back, Dr. Vasquez. We have been waiting. The lunar AI that greeted them was beyond anything humanity had possessed before the long sleep. It had spent nearly 1 million years learning, growing, and preparing. It had monitored the galaxy's development, studied the hegemony's technology, and most importantly, it had built an industrial capacity that dwarfed anything in human history. The facility has been productive during your absence, the AI explained as it guided them to a landing bay. Current naval strength consists of 47,000 vessels of various classes. Industrial capacity has increased by a factor of 12,000 since your departure. Defensive systems are operational and undetected by current galactic powers. Alina stared at the numbers on her screen. 47,000 ships, an industrial base that had been growing and improving itself for nearly 1 million years. They weren't just the last survivors of humanity, they were the inheritors of the greatest military buildup in galactic history. What about personnel? Marcus asked the obvious question. Ships need crews. Anticipated, the AI responded. Genetic archives contain complete DNA profiles of the Earth Defense Fleet personnel. Accelerated growth and training protocols have been developed. First-generation crews can be ready within 6 months of authorization. Alina felt a mix of excitement and unease. They had the tools for war, but at what cost? You're talking about creating people, artificial humans. I prefer the term restored humans, the AI corrected gently. Every individual would be genetically identical to someone who lived before the sleep. They would simply be given life again, along with the knowledge and skills necessary to serve. Over the following days, Alina and the other survivors explored the lunar facility, marveling at what nearly 1,000,000 years of automated development had accomplished. The AI had not simply built ships and weapons, it had created art, music, literature, and philosophy. It had preserved human culture while adapting it to the realities of their new situation. But perhaps most importantly, it had been watching. The galaxy, the hegemony, controls approximately 37% of this galactic arm, the AI reported during one of their briefings. They are not the only power, but they are the dominant one. Their expansion has stalled in recent millennia, due to resistance from species they classify as problematic adapters. Alina leaned forward with interest. Other species that refuse to surrender? Precisely. The Zilani Confederacy, the Broken Chain Alliance, the Free Worlds Coalition are groups of species that have successfully resisted hegemony expansion. They would be natural allies for a restored humanity. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing galactic political boundaries. What about their military capabilities compared to what we can field? Individual ship to ship, human technology maintains significant advantages in several key areas. Hegemony ships prioritize energy efficiency and standardization. Human ships prioritize survivability and adaptability. In theoretical combat scenarios, human forces show approximately a 3-1 tactical advantage. Alina felt a fierce pride in her species. Even after nearly 1,000,000 years, human engineering philosophy still proved superior in the art of war. But the most shocking revelation came when the AI shared its analysis of hegemony society. The alien empire wasn't a monolithic force of conquest, it was a rigid hierarchy maintained through fear and control. Entire species lived as subjects, their potential limited by artificial restrictions designed to prevent any group from challenging hegemony dominance. They learned from their war with humanity, the AI explained. They now prevent other species from developing the independence and technological innovation that made humans so dangerous. The galaxy is filled with civilizations that could rival the hegemony, but they are systematically prevented from reaching their potential. Alina saw the opportunity immediately. We don't just fight them, we liberate their subjects, turn their own empire against them. The humans always did prefer complex solutions, the AI observed with what Alina could swear was amusement. Simple conquest was never your style. As they prepared to return to Earth with their incredible news, Alina stood in the observation deck looking out at the fleet that awaited their command. Thousands of ships built with human determination and nearly 1,000,000 years of technological advancement. Each one represented not just military power, but hope, the hope that humanity could reclaim its place among the stars. We're not just coming back from extinction, she said to Marcus as he joined her at the observation window. We're coming back as liberators. Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. The galaxy forgot about us, but they never forgot why they were afraid of us. When we reveal ourselves, we're not just announcing humanity's return, we're starting a revolution. Alina smiled, feeling the weight of nearly 1,000,000 years of preparation behind her. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that humanity was gone forever. They were about to learn that some species refuse to stay dead. The age of liberation was about to begin, and humanity would lead the way.